Imagine the power to create worlds and bring characters to life. That's the realm of comic book artists. My name is Ray Raynette, and welcome to Farlook Studios. I'm a self-published comic book writer and illustrator, and today we'll talk about things that helped me improve and create the comic of my dreams. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more secrets, and go check out and read my comic book series, Junket, Hidden Worlds Revealed, only on Amazon. Now back to the video. On today's video, I wanted to highlight Jack Kirby's magnum opus, his hidden, intertwining story that literally went through every single massive publishing house since the beginning of his career. Jack Kirby was born in 1917 and he passed away in 1935. He was originally born as Jacob Kurtzberg on August 28, 1917 in New York City. He grew up on the Lower East Side, where his parents, who were Australian and Jewish immigrants, instilled love for drawing within him. As a young artist, he honed his skills by tracing characters from comic strips and editorial cartoons. He had an early career. At just 17 years old, Kirby began working at Fleischer Studios, where he contributed to Popeye cartoons. He worked as an in-betweener, illustrating the character in between the major scenes of the animated short. This early experience shaped his artistic sensibilities and laid the groundwork for his future in comics. In the 1940s, Kirby teamed up with writer-editor Joe Simon. Together they created numerous characters, including the highly successful superhero Captain America for Timely Comics, predecessor of Marvel Comics. Their dynamic partnership set the stage for Kirby's prolific career. Kirby's early work included depictions of gods in titles like Sandman and Thor with 2 R's, the Rock Monster. He explored mythic themes, and these early glimpses of Thor laid the groundwork for his later iconic portrayal of the Norse god in Marvel's universe. He originally depicted the god as intended, with red hair, with Viking horns, and with a grand, beautiful hammer named Mjolnir. Like many others at the time, Thor was simply another means to an end, another throwaway character for just another story, but you can tell that Kirby's love and passion for this kind of character continued appearing multiple times. Appearing again in Thor with 2 R's, the Rock Monster, it was this depiction of an Easter egg island kind of stone creature that emerges from the deeps and takes toward the city and attacks. We can see how this kind of story predates Thor's original debut, where he fights against these stone men from Mars. Kirby's passion for illustrating stone faces would be littered throughout his entire career, from the Fantastic Four's The Thing, all the way to in DC's Dark Side villain. Within the pages of Golden Age Captain America, Kirby delved into the divine and the diabolical. Take Mercury, later named Hurricane, a story where Hermes, son of Zeus, battles the malevolent Hades. Kirby's designs, influenced by Judeo-Christian imagery, cast Hurricane as an angelic figure and Hades as a devilish antagonist. This theme would resurface later in Kirby's magnum opus, the Mighty Thor. Originally named Journey into Mystery, Thor would take the crowds by storm. Thor was a winged helmeted hero, clashed with his mischievous half-brother Loki, both sons of the all-knowing All-Father Odin. They mirrored archetypal figures, Thor representing Saint Michael, the celestial warrior, and Loki as Lucifer, the cunning trickster. Their epic battles, alluding to Ragnarok, echoed the apocalyptic showdown of myth and revelation. Kirby's Thor embodied a stern fatherly figure, akin to the Old Testament depictions of God. Odin would be a caring god, but ruler of all. Within the earliest depictions of Hurricane, we can see where Hermes disguises himself as a mere mortal among Earth, and he, converses with a taxi driver, as later Thor would do as well. We can see how his kind of love for these characters, feeling as though they were human, would become integral to his work, especially with Thor's doppelganger or alter ego, Donald Blake. Not too many people realize that Thor's groundwork was laid before him. Superman was the original hero who wore blue and red and who would fly around to save the day. However, Kirby wanted to reinvent Superman and make him not only a son of a distant world, but a prince of a sovereign land up in the heavens, overlooking the entire Earth. Asgard, unlike Krypton, still remains, and Odin is constantly punishing his son for disobeying him. His punishment, which would later be further emphasized by Walter Simonson, would make sure to include that Thor is an outcast from Asgard. He has been punished by his father. He has been cast to be as a normal human. Of course, being his favorite son, Odin gives him a boon. He gives him the mighty staff. This mighty staff is not only just a symbolism for the ancient biblical narratives woven into the Mighty Thor, but there is also the brilliant twist to the iconic Captain Marvel. Instead of a child turning into a Superman-like figure, instead of a man turning into the Hulk, it's actually just an everyday normal doctor who pushes the staff against the ground and becomes a Norse god from ancient myths and legends of old. And after rediscovering his traditions and his ancient ways, he saves the day constantly against threats and against demons and evil forces from the worlds beyond. I think this not only emphasizes Kirby's genius for remaking and remodeling the Superman story, but creating something that would be way more expansive and massive than ever done before. Kirby would continue to add new exciting characters alongside with the writer Stan Lee. They would weave these epic stories with massive overarching proportions that they would interact with the other members of the world, and Thor would eventually obviously join the Avengers, and they also went on their own adventures and on their own battles against good and evil. But specifically in Thor, Kirby began something that had never been done before. Jack Kirby would then go on to make the Tales from Asgard, further expanding the mythos of this world in his mind. He would utilize bonus stories within the main material, a small little 5-pager that would expand the mythos beyond comprehension. Within these stories is where it truly begins. Here's where Kirby directly alludes to Ragnarok. It is the first time it is mentioned, and it is built up the entire time. There are other little stories that are woven in, like the aspects of death and the Grim Reaper and the Horsemen and all of these other things, but primarily right there and then is where Kirby has an idea. Something sparked in his mind. He understood what he had to do, and it was the beginnings, the early whispers of his true masterpiece. But Kirby felt as though he was being underappreciated and overworked at the time at Marvel. He had done so much for so long, and yet he felt so little compensated. After a couple back and forths with Stan Lee and the other team members, he decided to part ways with Atlas Comics, with Marvel Comics. He decided to leave them for the time being because he believed that they were not treating him fairly. But this did not stop him, however. He very quickly switched sides and went across the street over to DC Comics, and he was accepted with open arms. However, things started off at a rocky start. Kirby is a humble man, and he was always nice and generous. Even though he could have taken over any of the main titles, he did not want to take away work from people who were already there before him. So he wanted to work on the book that did the worst. He wanted to work on the book that did the lowest numbers and the lowest sales figures, and that no one really wanted to work on. He thought that that avenue would be wide open for him to experiment, to really try things that he had never done before. And now, he could finally begin the story that has been brewing in his mind for the past couple years. Kirby then made a bold initiative to really continue the story that he had laid the groundwork for back in Marvel. But now at DC, he had an open range to really focus on making something brand new from this idea and these concepts. Within the Fourth World Saga, he envisioned a cosmic tapestry. Earth, Asgard, and the 9 realms lay in ruins after Ragnarok. Thor and Odin seemingly perished, while Loki still slumbers eternally. As the remnants healed, new superheroes emerged. Metropolis and Gotham rose from the ashes, and the weakened Highfather, Isaiah, stood in for Odin. His staff perhaps being the disguised hammer of Thor, which was hinted to have a divine lineage. We even get to see Thor's helmet and his magical horse have found new bearers, like the character of Lonar. Kirby's Fourth World Saga expanded the mythos, introducing New Genesis and Apocalypse, realms inhabited by the new gods, because the old gods were now dead. Here the struggle between good and evil transcended mere mortals. Kirby's theological and mythological influences were evident. Names like Isaiah and Genesis alluded to biblical themes. The saga unfolded across the cosmos, weaving intricate narratives of gods, heroes, and cosmic forces against evil and the glimpses of good. The New Gods explores the creation of the Fourth World, which is a parallel universe inhabited by powerful beings like Darkseid, Mr. Miracle, and the Forever People, which each would have their own respective books. Jack Kirby's first book into the Fourth World Saga really does begin with Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. Again, this was a failing book and no one really wanted to work on it, so Kirby decided he didn't want to step on anyone's toes and simply experiment on the book that, sold the least, and see if he could turn that around to make it become popular again. Immediately, he began writing stories with Superman. At the time, Superman had become a very boring superhero, and he had become like a family man with Supergirl, Superwoman, all the super characters that no one really cared about. Jack Kirby decided to just bring it back to the basics and integrate things that he learned from his own comics over at Marvel that were successful, like Thor. And he just had Superman fight against monsters again, about these ancient demonic aliens from outer space, these things that were similar to the High Evolutionary in Thor, where they were crossbreeding weird genetic experiments and militaries and wars brewing in the backgrounds, and we would get to see Superman see glimpses of Supertown and Apocalypse and New Genesis, and he would speak to some of the characters that he would later integrate within the Fourth World Saga and the New Gods. Here we get to see Kirby experiment the most. He's bringing back characters similar to Captain America and the Hulk and Silver Surfer. He's bringing all his concepts back from Marvel over to DC and just making it his own. He made the Guardian, which is his stand-in for the Golden Age Captain America. This time, only him without Bucky, and without him being glorified as a patriot. It just becomes a superhero who's constantly swinging and moving and action-based all the time. We get to see stand-ins for the Hulk and things that are similar to the Silver Surfer and a whole bunch of concepts that Kirby really just kept reintegrating into his work and really just leaving his mark over at DC as best as possible. In Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, Jack Kirby really was able to experiment more like he's never done before. He was able to do these things that we now call the Kirby collages, which he would cut out his own characters that he would draw and place them with these collages and these masterpieces of just newsprint cutouts of advertisements and all these weird just things that would somehow make the world seem more alien and extraterrestrial. It really just felt like you were stepping into this completely different dimension. He would later use these things within his Marvel work as Fantastic Four and the Mighty Thor, but he never really had the liberty to experiment with it as much as he did over at DC. At this point in time in his career, Jack Kirby was literally just cranking out comics left, right, and center. He started making things like Commandy, The Demon, OMAC, and all of the Fourth World Saga stuff, and that wasn't even really the end of it. The Fourth World is really a name that the fans had given what he was making because it had never been seen before. Kirby's really the innovator behind an early version of graphic novels and overarching stories. Honestly, DC didn't really know what to do with the guy because he just kept cranking out new ideas, and they didn't really know what to do because they just wanted the same formula They just wanted to crank out more Batman, more Superman. They didn't really care about all these new ideas and properties that they were just having. And now they're just kind of sitting in their office and unused. Ultimately, the story where Kirby really poured out his heart and soul was in the New Gods, and I believe that it's the most expansive one yet, and it treated characters with a depth that had never been seen before. Since this time, he was writing the comics himself, instead of having Stan Lee looking over his shoulder and telling him what to do. Kirby was really just going all out, using the character of Orion, this almost evil version of Thor, this troubled veteran, this war-torn hero, right? He's like this god of war who's constantly raging for battle. There's a lot that alludes to his love for the Iliad and the rage of Achilles, right? This warrior who could never sleep, this warrior who could never know the touch or the love of a woman. It's this warrior who's constantly torn between his good and evil because he is the son of a devil. Apocalypse and New Genesis are these biblical kind of realms overlooking a troubled world below. Kirby weaves in these small stories of humans who are caught in the storm of the battle between good and evil, and they're kind of heart-wrenching to read because you never really know what's going to happen. Most of the humans die. Most of the humans are just kind of there, left and abandoned. Metropolis becomes this battleground of sorts, where you get to see everyday human beings who were rescued by Orion join in on the fight, and we get to see the police helping out against these hordes of bug monsters and these demons that are, come from this extra dimension. And I do believe that some of these characters not only allude to, the character of Loki and, stuff like that, but there's the Forager, who definitely draws inspiration from Spider-Man. It's this little bug character who is just very humble in his own little world underneath New Genesis. He's just a young man who wants to see the world be a good place, and he's doing what he's told by his own queen and his own king of the bug people. But he's drawn into the battle as well. It seems that no one can really escape this havoc, right? This massive battleground, this massive war. It really just infiltrates on everyone's lives, and no one can escape it no matter how hard they try. Eventually, the story culminates in the small graphic novel of Hunger Dogs, and it concludes, after the beautiful ending to New Gods. And I don't want to spoil it. I really recommend that you guys read the New Gods because it's one of the best comics out there. I'd say it's up to par with Watchmen, up to par with Dark Knight, if not even better. Some of the things that Kirby really just plants the seed in within these stories that you never see it ever again. Jack Kirby's stories are really in a league of their own. He, quite frankly, made his own little pocket dimension, his own corner of the DC universe, which is more massive than anything in the mainstream. The story of Orion finding out that Darkseid is his father can clearly be connected to, George Lucas working at a comic shop, reading the New Gods, and then going on to make Star Wars. There's a very clear, parallel within the two stories, and you can kind of see where, George Lucas took his ideas from. Later on, DC wanted to utilize these characters and bring them all back, primarily just the villains, because they thought that they were pretty good. It was probably some of the best villains DC had ever seen, and so they were trying to see if they could copy what the success was over at Marvel with Secret Wars, the beautiful event where all of the heroes fight against all of the villains in this, this battleground of a battle world, right? So DC wanted to kind of do that, and since they had Jack Kirby, why not use the guy who literally invented all the heroes to kind of bring them into this kind of story? Thus was born Superpowers. And it's this 10-issue miniseries which really culminates in this beautiful story between the characters of the DC universe against the characters of Apocalypse. We get to see all of the DC villains and all of the heroes join together to fight against the common good. This is a direct influence and inspiration to, obviously, Thanos in the Marvel Universe. Darkseid was literally the blueprint to inspire Jim Starlin and the characters over at Marvel. Frankly, it's really interesting to see Jack Kirby tackle on all of the Justice League members and draw all of them from his own hand. It really just gets better once he does all of the pencils and all of the artwork himself, but he does write and script and lay out the entire book front to back. I'm not sure why it's not considered to be a part of the fourth world, because it really is the direct continuation of everything he laid before. Kirby would later return to Marvel, and he would bring these ideas with him. He would go on to invent the Eternals and the Celestials. He would later introduce the Inhumans to both Thor and Fantastic Four. He would bring in Galactus, Silver Surfer. He would bring in the Trolls and the war against Asgard within Thor. And he would make Ego the living planet, which we later see, and the High Evolutionary. All of these concepts, these almost science fiction, godlike things. He really just couldn't get this idea out of his head. He really loved whatever story he was writing, and he kept bringing them back and writing it throughout both companies over at DC and at Marvel. After he left Marvel again, he decided things had to change. He became one of the most mainstream, most recognized artists in the industry to go solo. In the early 1980s, after a storied career over at Marvel and DC Comics, Jack Kirby embarked on a new adventure with Pacific Comics, or PC Comics for short. This period marked a pivotal moment in his career, as it allowed him to exercise unprecedented creative freedom and explore bold new ideas. He would continue his fascination and love for science fiction through the story of Captain Victory and the Galactic Rangers. One of Kirby's most iconic creations during his Pacific Comics era was Captain Victory. This series showcased Kirby's signature blend of cosmic adventure, heroic protagonists, and stunning visuals. Captain Victory, a powerful hero with a futuristic arsenal, led a team of diverse heroes against cosmic threats. The series explored themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the power of the human spirit. He would also later go on to continue with the high evolutionary genetic tampering things that he would write about in his DC and Marvel work. In Silver Star, another notable creation from the Kirby Pacific Comics era, this series featured a more grounded detective noir style, but still retained Kirby's signature energy and creativity. Silver Star was a detective with a mysterious past, navigated a world of crime and corruption, and often encountering supernatural and extraterrestrial elements. Within Kirby's work, there was always the undertones and lingering themes of his past stories. Interestingly, Kirby's work at Pacific Comics often referenced and expanded upon his fourth world mythology. Captain Victory, for instance, was hinted to be the son of Orion, a prominent figure in the New God saga. This connection between Kirby's earlier work at DC and his later creations at Pacific Comics demonstrates the interconnectedness of his creative vision. Kirby's time at Pacific Comics was a period of immense creativity and innovation. His work during this era showcased his ability to craft compelling stories, design iconic characters, and really push the boundaries of the comic book medium as a whole. Jack Kirby, the king of comics, was a visionary artist whose influence on the medium is immeasurable. His boundless imagination and innovative storytelling truly revolutionized the comic book industry and shaped it into what we think about superheroes and the nature of heroism itself. From the golden age of comics to the modern era, Kirby's legacy continues to inspire and captivate audiences. His characters, stories, and artistic style have left an enduring mark on popular culture, and his impact will be felt for generations to come. For all of artists listening out there, your work matters. Whatever you make now is echoed in the future, and you have to go and truly give it your heart and soul and never stop drawing. Think as Kirby did, draw as Kirby did, and create worlds bigger than life. Now use this inspiration and motivation to go and hit the drawing table like you've never done it before. Make things that you've always dreamt of making and do it now, because you never know the lasting impact that it will leave in the culture.
By his own admission, Jack Kirby's superhero creations are so numerous even he can't keep track. After some 40 years at the drawing board and an estimated 40,000 pages of action with such characters as Captain America, Fantastic Four, and the Avengers, Kirby is the undisputed king of comic book superheroes.
What do your characters represent? Well, the characters represent a sort of a transcendent feeling that we all have inside us, that we could do better. We want to do better. We haven't time to do better. We can be the people that we lionize. If you look at my characters, you'll find me. No matter what kind of character you create or assume, a little of yourself must remain there.
As he sits each day at his board, alone with his characters, Jack Kirby is far from lonely.
I haven't got the trappings of a circus, but there in my mind is a very active and bright and colorful place that's as good as any circus that I've ever seen. And I live with that, and I enjoy it immensely.
Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Ray Raynette from Farlook Studios. Please go check out my self-published comics on Amazon titled Junket: Hidden Worlds Revealed. I've already released issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on the way, so please go check them out on Amazon and let me know what you think in the comments below. I've also opened a spread shop of all of my drawings and all of my icons and logos that you could buy and represent the Farlook Studios brand. Remember, Farlook represents looking far into the future and thinking ahead and having vision. I will be immensely grateful for any of the love and support that you guys provide, and please go like, follow, subscribe, everything. Go follow me on Instagram at Ray Raynette, where you can see updates of me working behind the scenes on my projects, where I single-handedly create my own comic books. And if you haven't seen the other videos, go check out the How to Make a Comic Book series and the top 10 secrets that most artists don't know. Moving forward in this channel, I want to start speaking about different artists, not only focusing on comic books, but I want to provide information about Greek myths, Roman legends, and how that has impacted literature and storytelling as a whole. So, to all the artists who are listening, go out there and create the impact that you want to leave behind. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.